Hello, welcome to this very special conversation with Rebecca Lockyer, Liana Hudson and myself, Emma Siebold. I will introduce us and then we'll dive into our topic for today, which is all about how to advance your personal Pilates and barre practice and what the journey of becoming a teacher might look like for those of you who are interested and maybe thinking about that. So first I'll introduce you to Liana. Here she is. Liana is our head of training at Barre Body and Bend. She has an absolute wealth of experience in teacher training, personal practice, and teaching all of the classes. And beautiful Rebecca Lockyer, she is also an extremely talented teacher. She has done so much training herself. She's got a lot to offer. She's also one of our head trainers in Byron Bay. She's our head of teachers in Byron Bay and she's one of our teacher trainers. So these amazing women will give you a really great insight with lots of depth and their own personal experience in what it's like to be an advanced student and also what it's like on the journey of teacher training, both coming at it from a teacher trainer and also someone who's done a lot of teacher trainings. And then there's me, of course. I'm the founder of Barre Body and Bend. I know a bit of stuff too, and I'm really here to facilitate the conversation today. So I'm going to start with Beck. Beck, tell me about your journey. The beginning part of your journey. How did you fall in love with Pilates? Where did it start?
Okay, so when I was 17, I auditioned for a full-time ballet school in New Zealand. They told me that the only reason I would get into the school was if I did Pilates and work on my posture, which was terrible without it.
Look at it now.
So at that point, sometimes. So at that point, I started working with a physio who was also a Pilates instructor, one-on-one. And then I got into the ballet school. And when I got to the ballet and contemporary school, I discovered that we actually had a Pilates instructor who came to the school and she did Pilates mat classes with us once or twice a week. We also had this amazing Pilates studio with reformers and a Cadillac. So we would get to work with her and do one-on-ones or 3 people with the instructor, and she would work on all our little imbalances, and we would do a class with her probably 3 times a week. We'd all get the opportunity to do Pilates mat or reformer or studio work. And that obviously really helped my posture. It helped me to become really strong when I was dancing. When I left school and I started dancing professionally, I kind of fell off the wagon a little bit with the Pilates and really noticed that in terms of my posture, obviously, and sort of my strength and sort of getting through all those shows and feeling super strong. So I then started to do my own Pilates classes, like mat classes mostly, because I was sort of overseas without a reformer. So I quickly realized that it was like something I absolutely had to do. I couldn't live without it. So
I love that. So we're going to talk more about the onward journey soon, but Liana, tell me about how you came to Pilates, because you were a dancer too.
I was, so yeah, look, similar, not quite the same. Our studio did not have our own Pilates instructor or reformer and Cadillac, but yes, I was a dancer early on, so probably from, I don't know, the wee age of 6, but kind of dabbled in gymnastics and dancing, and then kind of as a teen, we would do weekly Pilates Mat classes within our ballet studio. So that's how I was kind of introduced to it, which at the time I didn't really know what it was. I was like, this is kind of like exercisey. This is so weird. It's not dancing. But obviously that helped us as dancers to kind of utilize the correct muscles so that we could, build strength and hold those positions in dancing. And then when I decided not to become a ballet dancer early in my teens, I kind of fell off the wagon and didn't do too much Pilates, and then came into it later in life in my early 20s when I kind of started looking at a career and found it again and remembered how it made me feel when I was in my teens and was, really thinking about how it made my body, how strong I felt, and how I was able to hold those positions. And I really wanted that feeling back again. But also you kind of pick up bad habits when you're a dancer as well, and when you're in your teens. So my glutes definitely didn't work. So when I went back into Pilates, I was working on all those kind of foundational movements again to, get all those imbalances corrected again.
It's a funny thing coming to the practice. So I'm not a dancer, the only one here who's not a dancer. I had a yoga background before I started Pilates, and I thought yoga was it and a bit. It was all of it. It was sort of life for me. And then after I had Xavier, so my first baby, I started dabbling in barre, and barre has a lot of inspiration from Pilates. And I realized I had this strength all of a sudden, and then got into Pilates as well, and had this amazing strength that felt like this strength coming from the inside, like this, instead of just being flexible and floppy, I had this sense of power. So that's what Pilates has meant to me. And every year that I get older, I'm so grateful for Pilates, because it makes me, again, I have, really nice posture now because of Pilates. It just makes me feel healthier. It makes, even just the way that I walk, the way that I carry myself, the way that I sit, everything, look at how beautifully we're all sitting up straight, because we're always, you're always conscious, or it's not even conscious anymore. It's just this subconscious thing that happens. It's like, we just lift so it's just that beautiful sense of strength. That's what I love about Pilates so much. So much so that, I've made it my life, as have you guys. So then we start talking about the start of your journey, and obviously then that develops into an advanced practice. And then as an advanced student, what typically happens is you think, as you did, I wonder if there's a career here for me. Let's talk a little bit about that. And then I want to circle back and talk more about what it means to be an advanced student and how you can advance your practice as an advanced student. But let's talk about the teacher training journey. So tell me, Beck, you were living overseas as a dancer. What then made you decide to become a Pilates teacher?
Well, I was overseas until I was about 26, and I'd made the decision that I was going to move to Sydney full time. I think by that point I was already really ready to dive into that Pilates journey more.
It's a natural progression for dancers, right?
It's very natural. Your body starts kind of giving out. You want to be settled, you want to stop traveling. So I moved to Sydney, and I decided before I'd even moved there that I was going to study Pilates. So I did a Pilates Mat training, straight into a reformer training, and basically stopped doing everything and just did that full time. So just really immersed myself in it, which was very grateful that I actually got to do that.
It's pretty magical, that experience, isn't it? Just really immersing yourself in the experience of learning something that you're so passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. So was a Pilates student, was also working on the reception desk at the studio that I did my training with. So I was always just doing classes, and I was there, and I finished the training and pretty much straight away got a job at this particular studio and started teaching reformer, and was teaching, 20 classes a week almost instantly.
Straight into a full-time teaching career.
So I basically, by the end of week one, was like, okay, I think I can do this. Like, I've taught 20 classes, I'm feeling good.
And that's the best way to do it, right? You would agree, Liana, when the actual practice of doing teacher training, it's so overwhelming, and you feel like, who am I to be here? And we always tell people, you know what, this is the hard bit. Like, when you actually get out and start teaching, that's when you'll find your flow. So Liana, what about you? How did you transition from being a student to a teacher?
Yeah, so I had that bit of a gap between finishing up dancing and kind of becoming an adult. So decided I didn't really want to go down the avenue of dance, and then was a little bit lost. I really enjoyed movement and being creative, but I couldn't quite figure out where that path was going to lead me. So I was working in hospitality. I went into a finance job, in corporate, and then kind of dumped it all, went overseas, and I was like, can't do this, don't want to be in an office. I need to do something physical as my career, and I just couldn't quite figure out what that was. And everything kind of led me back to dancing, and I was like, okay, so what can I do that's, movement based? So I did my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. Wasn't very authentic to me. I don't think I even did PT to one person. I was just like, this is not my vibe. Learned a lot, which was great, about the body, which then just made me want to learn even more. I love anatomy, so that kind of sparked the passion. And then I started thinking about Pilates again, and knowing that I loved doing it when I was doing ballet. And I went on Seek. I don't even know why. I think I was looking at jobs, and I saw this barre studio, and you had to have your Pilates Mat certificate in order to work there. And I was like, I love ballet, I loved Pilates, I don't want to be a ballet teacher, but I was like, it's merging it all together. And I was like, this is perfect. So I went and did a few Pilates Mat classes to remember it. I mean, it had been some time. Loved it, of course, again, and then dove straight into my teacher training. And then, it was like this snowball. I was like, this is where I need to be. This is what I love. And it just, you work hard to get there, of course, and there's obviously those moments where you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? But went into teaching straight away, straight after that into full-time teaching. Yeah.
And it happens really quickly from there, doesn't it? It's like there's this incredible snowball, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm a teacher. Like, I'm an actual teacher. So for me, similar but different journey. My first teacher training was actually yoga, and I remember going into it thinking, because it had a pretty strong yoga practice, going into it thinking, I don't know if I want to be a teacher, but I really like the idea of being able to say, I'm a yoga teacher. And then through the practice of doing the teacher training, and we have so many people come to Barre Body saying, I'm not sure if I want to be a teacher, I want to advance my practice. And I know so many students, I'd say maybe 30% of our students don't actually go on to teach, but they're doing it just to advance their practice, which I think is really incredible, because you learn so much in that process. So anyway, going back to thinking about wanting to be a teacher, the idea of being a teacher, then I started teaching, and I was like, oh, I want to be a teacher. Like, I really like the practice of actually teaching and sharing movement and sharing, just, I guess, supporting other people in their journey. That really clicked for me and became meaningful. So that was sort of how I came to it, and then, progressed into barre and Pilates. So that's something that happens a lot, isn't it? We have people who are just coming to advance their own personal practice. And there's so many ways you can do it. You can find your teacher, I'd say would be one of them. Find the teacher who is going to meet you where you're at. So a teacher who can deliver progressions for you. And we definitely try to do that in our studios. And then the other way, obviously, is to consider teacher training, as I've said. So for you guys, for someone who's, let's say, don't want to be a teacher, but someone who's an advanced student, and I've mentioned some of them, but what do you think the pathways are? What's your advice, I should say? Because I've probably given some of the advice, which is find a great teacher and find a teacher training. But what do you do? So I'm going to ask a different question, actually. What do you do, Liana, to advance your own practice now? You're obviously a really accomplished teacher. You're a trainer of teachers. How do you keep the practice fresh and advance your own personal, Pilates practice?
Yeah, good question. I like to kind of dabble between things. So I teach barre, Pilates and reformer. And I feel like anything, also I'm someone that can get bored of things quickly sometimes. So with that mash, it is like the perfect little thing. Throw yoga in there too, because I love yoga as well, but it's like my happy place because I don't teach it. So it's like, that's the one thing that's like my practice, which is really nice. But it's to create like a little mash of everything. So I'll go through this really big period where I love barre, and I will do online classes, and I'll pick different instructors every time, and I'll pick different studios around my area, you know, with people that don't teach like our style or that do teach our style, so that I can see different elements of what people are teaching. And then kind of through that, you'll find that teacher that's like, that teacher challenges me in a safe way, but they're going to keep pushing me with it. You know, as an advanced client or in your practice, you still want to be pushed. If you're showing up there every single day, you don't want to be overlooked because you know what you're doing. So when you find that teacher that can see you and they're like, I can see you and I know that's easy for you, I'm going to push you a little bit harder. They're the people that you want to kind of are drawn to and navigate to, because they're going to be the ones that push you. And then, as you said, kind of just then maybe going into teacher training or finding something, you know, that you're passionate about. We do have a lot of people that do trainings that don't want to be a teacher, and kind of like halfway through they change their minds and they're like, I really like it. A lot. It happens a lot. They're like, I'm just doing it because I just really love it and I want to know more about my body. And the anatomy aspect, I think, is what really makes people like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense of why you're doing stuff in classes, which is so good when you then go and practice it. But yeah, you kind of hit like a few days in and they're having so much fun and they're like, I think I want to be a teacher now. And I'm like, yes, you do. But it just shifts your mindset into, you know, you find your people in a training as well. If you go into a training that you're passionate about, it's not a, you know, course that you've been thrown into, or you're not at school having to do maths that you didn't want to do. You've chosen to be there, and the amount of people that are like, oh, I like these people, I really connect with them, and they kind of find their tribe. And it's so beautiful to see in trainings, which is like why I love it so much. One of the many reasons why I love taking them so much is that you just see this like light come up in people's eyes and they're like, this is so good for my soul. And they're like, I don't want to go back to my job anymore. I want to do this. I love these people. And then people make lifelong friendships in our trainings. Because that environment is so nourishing and nurturing and supportive and loving, but you're also going through something quite intense.
It's a transformation.
It is. And when you're with a group of people and you're going through this really hard thing, you have this connection with them.
Like Big Brother.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like school camp. I literally say it every time. I'm like, it's kind of like school camp. No one wants to leave. And then you have this bond with people that you can't quite explain to your family, your friends, your partner. They don't get it. They weren't there. But you have this bond with them that is really special. And that's one of my favorite things about training. So yeah, advance your practice, but you might become a teacher after it. Good for both things. Good for both things, but also good to, I don't know, if you're wanting something a little bit different, or if you really want to jump into a passion, do it. Just go for it, because I don't think I've ever heard someone be like, I regret doing that. That's never come out of someone's mouth.
I wholeheartily agree. So what about you, Beck? In you teach a lot of classes and deliver teacher trainings, and I know you, like me, have a home practice. So how does your home practice fit into being, you know, continuing to stay engaged and continuing to learn? Like, how do you use your home practice to support that?
So yes, I do most of my learning and practicing at home because I have 5-year-olds. So pretty much my day looks like get up, meditate, and then I plan the night before what class, which platform, which class, which teacher I'm going to do. So I'm all prepared. I've got all the things that I need, whether it's a mat and yoga blocks if it's yoga, or if it's like weights or whatever it is. So I tend to dabble in different, find different people that I want to like learn from, and I'll do those classes, and then I'll just implement little bits into my own teaching. So I won't just be like, I'm going to be exactly like this person, but I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take, maybe 10 to 20% of what I've learned and put it in, and I'll work with that until it feels really absorbed and I know what I really enjoy from that. And then I'll go back to that same sort of platform class teacher, or I'll find something else and I'll add that in. And it's basically just like layering on different, styles and ways of teaching and ways of flowing. And not just Pilates, I do quite a bit of sort of strength work as well with dumbbells and that kind of like heavier weights. And I like to implement that into my reformer practice. So for my own reformer practice, and also when I'm teaching, I'll add in quite a bit of more athletic style things, and people really enjoy that because they get such a full body workout and it's a little bit different. I also am a massive anatomy geek, so always sort of trying to learn and pick up new things that are happening in the anatomy world and sort of functional training world, and adding that in and talking about that.
All really, really useful stuff, I think, for people who watching this wanting to know, maybe I want to be a teacher, maybe I just want to advance my practice. I've thought of a few more things that I want to add. One of them is stay curious. So keep exploring. I think a home practice too. Home practice, which we've just talked about with Beck, home practice is so great. So like Beck, I have 2 children and limited time, and I practice at home, and I often will use my home practice to go, okay, I want to nail forearm balance, or I want to nail open leg rocker. So I'm going to work on that for a few weeks and, find some online classes that support that, or do my own research, watch YouTube tutorials so that I can then master that move at home. So I feel like I'm continuing to grow and develop in my practice. The other one that I touched on before is find a teacher, but I'll elaborate on that to say, tell the teacher that you want to advance your practice. Let that teacher know. Don't we love that when a student comes to us and says, either I'm new, I need extra help, or I'd really like to nail this move. Can you throw it into class? And we do it every time, right? And it's such a joy for us to have advanced students in classes. So they're the little bits and pieces that I'll add to this idea of advancing your practice. To close our conversation today, I'm going to ask one more question of you guys, and that is, let's say you are thinking about doing a teacher training. So what do you say to someone, Liana? What do you say to someone who's watching this who's like, oh, maybe I do want to do a teacher training, as from either the perspective of being an advanced student or to become a teacher? What would you say? And I think I know what you're going to say.
Just do it.
Yes.
Just do it. I know it's easier said than done, but if you kind of have a rule, and I almost have this rule in my life as well, if I've been thinking of something for 3 to 6 months, I do it. If it's constantly in your mind and you've been constantly thinking about it, just do it, because you've obviously thought about it a lot, and it's something that, is taking up time in your mind and in your life that you're like, but what if I'm not good enough? And we have all had those thoughts, still have those thoughts day to day in teaching, but just do it, because when you get there, and it is really overwhelming and daunting, but when you're there with the group, everyone's going through the same thing. Even us facilitators, it's a whole new group that we've never met before. We have nerves too. We're stepping into something that we're like, we don't know these people, but we want to have a lot of fun with you all. It's fun, enjoy it, don't take it too seriously, because whatever you get out of it is going to be better than not doing it. So even if it's just, okay, I took anatomy away from that and now I know what muscles work in what exercises, or I've now found my passion and I want to change my entire career, or yeah, I think I just want to teach a couple of classes a week at my local studio and still have my full-time job. It doesn't matter what you want to do with it. People if you jump into it, it kind of clicks into place as you go along the week and as you go along in your training. You just find this rhythm and path, and it just opens up so much if you let it. So jump in the deep end. It's scary, but don't dip your toe in, just go full blown in.
Would you agree, Beck?
Yeah, totally. So I think we probably touched on this, but like, I really feel like we should never stop learning. So I'm such a big advocate of like learning, studying, learning. So if you're really passionate about Pilates or Reformer or yoga or barre, like definitely just learn. It doesn't matter if you're gonna be a teacher or not. So as Liana said, like you're not gonna know until you jump in and you're a few days in and then you suddenly know. So just do it, keep learning, have fun, and as we were saying before, like those lifelong connections, those special bonds, like you're not gonna find that many other places than in this kind of environment where you're learning something brand new together that you're passionate about.
Yeah, and Liana touched on it, and I'll add to it as we sort of close off our discussion. Everybody feels the fear, and most people feel that sense of, who am I to be a teacher? Who am I, you know, and who am I to start at the very beginning? Everybody has to start at the beginning. So there needs to be new teachers. There needs to be completely brand new teachers to keep this cycle of teachers and keep this cycle of learning going. So if you're coming at it from a fear space, I can promise you that 90% of people have that exact same experience. And I would say absolutely push through that. I'd also say, you know, young, gorgeous women here. I'm 42, Beck just turned 37, Liana is 32. And we have so many clients who are younger than us, and so many clients, both advanced students and teachers, who are older. So wherever you are, at whatever point you are in your life journey, it's not too early and it's absolutely not too late. I think as I'm growing older, I'm starting to think about my practice differently. I'm starting to think about it from a totally different perspective and thinking, how do I preserve my body? How do I make my, continue to stay young young body-wise? I have knee issues, so my Pilates practice is really important from that perspective. I remember when I was young, my mum had a book on the shelf called Strong Women Stay Young, and the premise of it, and something that I'm super aware of, knowing that I'll head into menopause soon, is that it's really important to have a strength-based practice to help stave off osteoporosis, to help stay young. So young at heart, young at body. So yeah, my final words would be, wherever you are, however old you are, whatever you're thinking, it is so worth taking the plunge, whether it's to advance your practice, whether it's to become a teacher, or if you walk away from this conversation just saying, oh, I'm gonna pick up one thing, I'm gonna start my home practice, or I'm gonna find an advanced teacher, or I'm going to think about what other type of learning lights me up. Maybe you want to study photography. Hopefully this conversation, we've given you something special, something to, chew on, to think about. Thank you, Beck. Thank you, Liana. And thank you so much for listening to us have this lovely conversation.